Hello chess friends and welcome to Yazadov's chess channel and welcome to the day 3 of the Skilling Open in 2020. Today with another great game played by Magnus Carlsen, the world champion, against Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. As I promised in my previous video of this tournament, I will show you the results after 15 rounds and who is moving up to the quarterfinal stage, because if you didn't know, the concept was like this. 16 players play this one round robin, then the best 8 players are moving up to the quarterfinal stage, and then we'll have the knockout stage and many I think really cool games. So let's check out now the game between Magnus Carlsen and Vidit Santosh Gujrathi. I decided to show you this game because the Giuoco piano was played and I really wanted to study this Giuoco piano more and more. I've created a separate playlist. If you're familiar, I'm studying also some opening on my YouTube chess channel, so I wanted to study really the Giuoco piano. I really wanted to have a great base of great games in this particular opening, because I think it's very often played in this top grandmaster level, but I think it's often played in the beginner level. It's really one of the most complex but also one of the most played openings in chess history. So let's check out now the game. Magnus opened with the move e4, e5, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to c4, bishop to c5. The Giuoco piano, really a symmetrical position so far. Basically, when I play chess, I try not to go into symmetrical lines most of the times. From black's perspective, I try to play Sicilian, which is of course asymmetrical, and maybe some King's Indian, Nimzo Indian structures and stuff like that. I really don't like to go into Ruy Lopez lines and the Giuoco piano lines. As I said, it's just simply my taste. Here it's of course in top grandmaster level. Many times we have seen also that black is winning games, so I think both sides have equal chances in this particular line. So d3, we have knight to f6, a4 played by Magnus, and now we have d6. And here Magnus goes already in sort of a theoretical novelty. I'm sure that this move has been played many times in chess history, but I'm not seeing this move in a database in this top grandmaster level, or maybe in some FIDE master, international master level. Here Magnus Carlsen plays, I think, a very cool move. It's a great move, a5. I'm was really not sure why this move has never been played in chess history. At least, as I said, in the database, I cannot find any this move. So a5, in my opinion, is perfectly fine, because in some occasions we want, as I said, to create a space advantage here on the queen side. And the problem is now that black is a little bit stuck here on the queen side. This pawn creates really enormous pressure already. In the game, Vidit tried the move a6, which is of course perfectly fine, because let's see a possible continuation. If you, for instance, castle, then I think a6 is perfectly fine. We'll provoke some weaknesses. Even if you manage to trade off some pieces, I think this is a perfect pawn structure for white, because we have created now an isolated pawn, which can be a weakness. And even in this particular case, if black passed through, then I think black could face some likelihood problems on d5, b5, even b7. So we could go positionally into the game, follow maybe something like knight to c3, then knight to d5, knight takes d5, and bishop to d5. We're occupying this very important square, creating really some dangerous stuff on life square. So as I said, a5, really an interesting idea by Magnus Carlsen. As I said, I'm really not sure why this move hasn't been played so far. So here, after the move a5, a6, so you see Vidit is preventing this idea. One of the main ideas of the Giuoco piano by black is also to always create this breathing space for the bishop, where the bishop can stay on this very active diagonal. And I've seen many times some tactical shots on around the square f2, but also from white's perspective, I've seen also some tactical shots on f7. So both players have good bishop's activity in the game. Magnus tries the move c3. One of the main ideas could be also a pawn breakthrough motif. Here with the move d4, we have bishop to a7, and now Carlsen played by Magnus. Here comes, I think, also a very interesting line that Vidit could have played, bishop to g4. There are now, I think, several choices for white. I think there are many good lines, but there are also many bad lines. After the move bishop to g4, this wasn't played in the game. I wanted to show what kind of a mistake you can make. Maybe you could try maybe the move queen to b3, but I still think that black can castle here, giving up his pawn on b7. If queen to b7 would be played, then queen to d7 is threatening here some dangerous attacks against the queen. If the queen, for instance, retreats, then we could go bishop to f3. But white doesn't have to play this line, so I wanted to show you this perspectives of the Giuoco piano, what kind of a mistake you can make, because after bishop to f3, g takes f3, this is now a perfect position for black. although black gave up the pawn, black gave up also the bishop's activity, but this, I think, this weak square on f4 could be a problem in long terms. We can also remaneuver this knight, knight to e7, knight to g6, and then knight to f4. I think black will occupy this very important square and will activate his queen. When we have the f4 occupied, then I think it's time to move one of these rooks somehow, maybe here even to remaneuver to the g file. Really an interesting line. But as I said, if you face sometimes this pinning idea by black, you should be always aware of one particular line. You should first not to play move the queen to b3, h3, kicking away the bishop after bishop to h5, knight to d2 after something like castling. We want to stay like this. This bishop has to stay on this square where we can attack it. And now after rook to e1, maybe something like rook to e8, I think this will be normal development. We can maneuver our knight to f1 and then kick it away with knight to g3 without further weakening our pawn structure with g4, but also we're not vulnerable to this idea bishop takes f2 because we can still recapture with the queen and we don't have any more the weakened pawn structure. So this is sort of a defensive strategy, how to battle this very annoying pin. And I've analyze these ideas already on my Basics in Chess series. If you're familiar with my YouTube chess channel, I'll show you the links how to beat the spinning ideas when your opponent pins you. I'm sorry if I'm going too theoretical in this particular lines, but that's simply my style. As I said, I will show you the links how to unpin yourself, because the pinning idea is the most applied tactical idea in chess. So here, as I said, castling bishop to g4 wasn't played, but I wanted to show you what ideas for both ideas for white and black. So bishop to e3. We have bishop takes e3, f takes e3, and now black does the same. As I said, both players have this very annoying bishop's activity, and here after bishop takes e6, f takes e6, both players now go into a very complex middle game with two knights on the board, with two rooks, with the queens, with double pawn structures. So really, you have to be careful what to do here. So in the game, knight to d2 played by Magnus, of course d4 played by Vidit. If you try e takes d4, that's not good. E takes d5, pardon me, then e takes d5. I think black has a comfortable game. Black has two advanced pawns in the center. Whatever happens, e5, e4 is not so good. So as I said, here you have to be careful. Magnus plays now queen to b3, because after d takes e4, d takes e4, we could even take here the pawn on e6. We can also take the pawn on b7. We can also take out this pawn. But I think even d takes e4 is a possibility, and now we have a double attack on both of these pawns. And you see how good this move by Magnus Carlsen was. This move a5, the queen is not vulnerable to any attacks by the knight on a5. So as I said, I'm not sure if that's really, as I said in the beginning, the theoretical novelty, if it's really a theoretical novelty, but I think it's still a good move by Magnus Carlsen to move a5. So after the move queen to b3, here Vidit tried queen to d6. We have e takes d5, queen to d5, and now e4 play by Magnus. Again, he wants to deflect the queen from the defense of the e6. If queen takes b3 happens, then knight to b3. Okay, we have maybe a backward pawn, but I still think that this pawn structure by black is much worse. We could maybe defend this somehow. It may maybe bit rook from f to d1, then maybe knight to e1. We could have some kind of a protection of our d3 pawn, and I think slowly we could find targets here with maybe knight to c5 attacking the e6 and also the b7. So that's why Vidit doesn't go for this idea queen takes b3. He goes queen takes d3. But now Magnus takes out this pawn. Knight takes e4 was played. It's of course a temporarily sacrificed because Magnus can take this knight, but here Vidit can also take the knight on d2. After knight takes d2, here I think comes really the crucial mistake by Vidit, because it's not so easy now to see the best next move. It's really a complicated game, although it seems like a simplified line. The position is more simplified. We still have, of course, two rooks, so of course Vidit can take the knight, but the correct way here to take the knight is to first play the move queen to e3 to create first a check, deflecting the king from the defense of the rook. And that's very important, because you see now why in a couple more moves, because now white is not so glued together with this king supporting the rook on f1. And this is now very important, because Vidit takes queen takes d2, but now comes first this idea queen takes e6, and now after king to h8, pause the video and maybe try to see now the best next move for Magnus Carlsen. It's really a great tactical shot. That's what I meant. That's the importance because of this king move, king to h1, or if the king stays on g1, because now Magnus plays really a nice idea, queen to a6, and now after queen to b2, you see rook to f1 leads now into complicated games. Again, if you try rook to f1, we have rook to f1, and now you cannot take the queen. If you take the queen, you get checkmated on f8. So here, queen to a6, queen takes b2 was played, rook to f8, and here, as I said, we can compete now with the rook on f1. If the king would not be here on h1, we couldn't compete. We still, of course, can recapture with the queen, but that's not the point. The king is now more towards the center, and I think it's very, very important, because if the king would have been on h1, then you're always vulnerable to even some checkmate threats on back rank. But now, after trades of rooks on f1, we are not vulnerable anymore to some checkmate threats on the first rank. We can escape through f2. So it's a huge, huge difference, I think, and of course it is some kind of inaccuracy that you basically cannot see in this fast time format, but really incredible middle game now. After the move rook to f1, rook takes f1 was played, queen to f1, and now you see Vidit is the one who has to create some breathing spaces for the king. As I said, if Magnus would have been on h1, he would have to do the same. He would also have to play the move h3 in order to liberate his king. And now, after the move h6, Magnus, he plays, of course, a perfect endgame. Queen to f8, queen to h7, queen to f5, queen to e5, simply taking out the pawn. And the good part about this move is, of course, that we have now protected both of these pawns. We have a pass pawn, and this is now suddenly a winning endgame here for Magnus. If Magnus would have been with the king, as I said, on h1, he wouldn't have time to take the pawn, because then you again vulnerable to this back rank problems with this back rank checkmates. As I said, queen to e3 was the correct move by Vidit here in the game. Queen to c1. You see now Magnus can escape. He finds a path for his king. He can play king to f5. He moves simply further. He's not vulnerable to any checks. Even if Vidit tries some checks, we can always cover, and black can never trade off the queens, because if we trade off the queens, then again we have a pass pawn and it's simply winning. So that's why Vidit tried to stay on at least on his pawn here. But now queen to b8, we have king to h7, queen to b1, and now Magnus plays queen to b6. Now he can move his pass pawn. Here in the game, c4 was played, which was the best of moves. Maybe queen to g2 is again idea, but again I think white is simply faster with some ideas. Queen to b6. In the game, as I said, c4 was played here. Vidit makes a bad choice here. Magnus simply pushed. Queen takes g2 is simply too late, because queen to b8 played by Magnus, queen to c6, and now Magnus goes simply here, queen to d5, and now after king to e7, the problem is that this moving of the king comes with a check, and black has wrecked king to h7, and now we can promote another queen. Of course, Vidit tried to do some perpetuals, but that's not the point. Here, queen to c4, Magnus simply moves his kings further, and here, after queen to b2 in this position, Vidit resigned, because no more checks are possible. If you try queen to d1, then we simply play queen to b1. We're covering, but you have to also trade off the queens, and it was game over. So, as promised, I'm going to show you now the results, the standings after 15 rounds. Hikaru Nakamura won this round robin with 9 points. Magnus Carlsen also with 9 points, but Hikaru had a little bit better this additional criteria. Wesley So moves up into the top 8. Nepomniachtchi, Levon Aronian, Alireza, Firouzja is here, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and Anish Giri. I think Anish Giri deserved his place, because he was through the whole tournament on the first place. He got really a bad day 3. He deserved, I think, his a spot in the top 8. Unfortunately for Teimour Radjabov, Quang Liem, Liren, Vidit, Anton, Guijarro, David, Peter, Svidler, Sergey Karjakin, and Jan-Krzysztof Duda are not moving into the top 8. We'll see now the quarterfinal stage. So far, in my opinion, it was a great tournament. Incredible tactics, incredible opening preps, incredible you see also theoretical novelties. I think we had really some fun, and I'm going to cover this tournament for sure. It was a pleasure for me so far. Okay, if you want to see more games from this tournament, check out my skilling tournament link. Here's the link to the tournament. You can also check out some other games that I've covered so far. And if you want to see maybe the best chess games of all times, check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.